Hello, everyone, and inside today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, it is the Mock Draft 3.0 special. We are going to do two different mock drafts here, 4 rounds each. We're going to see who are we taking to fifth overall. Are they going to draft a goalie? What are the Canadiens actually up to in this draft? And, find out inside today's episode.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 869 of Locked On Canadiens. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week. And thank you for making us your first listen wherever you get your daily podcast, whether that be Google, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you are watching my shining face on YouTube as well, thank you so much. I am, of course, your host. I am Scott Matla. I am flying solo on today's episode. My co-host, The Active Stick, is currently preoccupied with something else right now. So I took today's show to kind of do one of my favorite things in the world, and that is the mock draft. I love mock drafts. I am stressing the actual NHL draft that is occurring in 10 days from the time that I'm recording this right now. And I've done a couple of these on the show this year. Mock Draft 1.0, I ran 3 different 3-round mock drafts. I did a 4-round mock draft with Ian Boisvert of The Build. And in this one, I did 2 4-round mock drafts. And I didn't intend to originally. I had originally intended to do one draft and just kind of work my way through that. And then something kind of interesting clicked in my brain. The first 4 picks in both of these drafts, for reference sake, all came out the same. Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Mishkov. 1, 2, 3, 4, right down the board in both drafts. When I got to 5th overall in the first draft, that meant Will Smith was available at 5th overall, and I was giddy. I love Will Smith. If you have followed this podcast, you know we love Will Smith. It's not a surprise to anybody. Potentially one of the second best playmaker in this draft. We know Connor Bedard is in a league of his own, but Will Smith is not a player to be underestimated in this. He's got some defensive warts. The defensive coverage and the lack of what they called hard skill in the Hockey Prospect Black Book, and that he doesn't leverage his body in situations and he prefers to play around people rather than through them, might worry some teams. Doesn't worry me. I'd rather people know how to avoid contact and get into the right spaces to make things happen. But I also understand that is not for everybody here. But I do think that Smith at 5 would be exactly what Canadiens fans are begging for. High skill, high talent, high ceiling. And as I did that, I thought, though, okay, I could take Smith in a second draft too, probably, right? And I stopped and I went, no, I'm going to change things up today. And I went and did a second draft. Like I said, I only plan on doing one. And I took Zach Benson at 5th overall in my second draft here. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Mishkov, all off the board. So there was no debate about whether or not they should take Mishkov or Benson or Smith or whatever. He was already gone. Could not select him in this. So I opted for Zach Benson. And you know why? I think Zach Benson has everything the Montreal Canadiens want their players to be. He is relentless on the ice. He is always making things happen. He's a dynamic playmaker. He's a great skater. He is smaller. So is Will Smith. That shouldn't be an issue anymore. And we know this. And I look at the way Zach Benson plays the game. And after talking with Tony Ferrari and talking with Sebastian High and other scouting people, Zach Benson is a guy I look at and go, you are an ideal candidate for Martin St. Louis here on this team. High IQ, knows how to play the game and get the pucks into certain areas and everything else. And I gotta say, I'm about that life. I would love it if they walked up to the podium and went, even if Smith and Mishkov are there for whatever reason on next Wednesday. Not this upcoming Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that. And they say Zach Benson. I do want Smith potentially the most, but I look at Zach Benson to go, it's really hard to be unhappy with this pick. If you're not sold on Mishkov for whatever reason and you want to take a winger, you might as well go and take Zach Benson. He's so smart. And now my thought was we have 31st overall. We know that's where that Canadiens pick is, and they haven't traded it yet. I am saying yet because they have not done anything. There is still plenty of time for Kent Hughes to do something crazy and weird here. And I made two separate selections here. Both kind of fell into the same vein of things, though. And remember, when I did this mock draft, I'm using FC Hockey's mock draft simulator. So it's based off of their rankings in their own scouting service. In draft one, the Will Smith draft, I picked Ethan Gauthier at 31st overall. Physical, mean, puts points up, plays on a very good Sherbrooke team, played with Joshua Wass. So the Canadiens are very familiar with Ethan Gauthier. And I think at 31st overall, he's not the flashiest. There's probably higher upside picks there. For sure, there are definitely higher upside picks there. But I also think that this is a pick that people wouldn't turn their nose up at this. It's right in Gauthier's ranking wheelhouse there. And I think he adds a wrinkle of being a physical style player without sacrificing the offensive upside there. He looks for that engagement. He loves that engagement, but he also knows how to put points on the board. And I think that's an important distinction from let's say the Michael McCarron pick and love a Michael Pezzetta where he, is a physical first forward. I think Gauthier is an improvement on both of those. And then in draft 2, the Zach Benson draft, for whatever reason in this, through their own algorithm, whatever, Samuel Honzek fell to 31st overall in this. And I don't anticipate that happening in the actual NHL draft here, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity. We know the Canadiens probably like Dalibor Dvorsky a little bit here, and I don't blame them. I think Dvorsky is a very talented player in his own right, but I look at Samuel Honzek and go, if he falls to 31st overall, you should be sprinting to the podium. He's got offensive upside. He's got power forward skill. He's got sniper touch. He's someone that I think would be a very fun addition. At 31st overall is great value because I assume Honzek will be gone by the early 20s at the latest here. And I think he is someone that the Canadiens would be really lucky to draft. And that's 2 out of the WHL on that side of the draft there. That's Benson and that's Honzek, which means a lot of Canadiens fans are going to want to be staying up a lot later to watch some of these here. So that is now through drafts. Draft 1, Will Smith, Ethan Gauthier. Draft 2, Zach Benson, Samuel Honzek. You have a high flash, sizzling upside player at 5th overall there. Tons of playmaking skill, tons of hockey IQ, and so much to love. And at pick 31, maybe not that same sizzle and boom, but you have solid players, solid floor players, higher floor players in the case of Honzek, both guys who should make the NHL. What their ceiling is depending on player development and their growth, but you know that they should be NHL players in this. And that's kind of why I leaned towards doing that here. And now things get a little bit weird because both these drafts played out somewhat similar and somewhat differently, starting at 37th overall. And it's kind of where my mindset changed a little bit as well. Draft 2 definitely got a little bit crazier because some people fell out of the first round or the end of the first round that I wasn't anticipating. And when we get to draft 2, we're going to go back to the WHL for a third time in our first 3 picks, which would be unheard of for the Montreal Canadiens, I'm pretty sure. If you're wondering who that is, well, we're going to get into that coming up in our next segment. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. And when you have a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And it's the same thing when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head over to eBay Motors, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, you'll be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your vehicle to the My Garage tab and look for the green check part to know that the piece will fit or your money back, because just like sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Some exclusions may apply. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens in Mock Draft 3.0, baby. We are in round 2. To recap round 1 in draft 1, Will Smith out of the USNTDP and William Gauthier out of the QMJHL. In draft 2, Zach Benson of the now moved Winnipeg Ice and Samuel Honzek of the Vancouver Giants. We are already filling out what looks to be a banger draft if I'm going to pat myself on the back because I am the one making these selections. So please shower me with praise. We're going to do round 2 and 3 here because there are 3 picks in round 4, and I think that needs a little bit more elaboration on. 37th overall, early pick in round 2 there after picking at 31st overall, and in draft 1, we've gone center winger at this point and go, well, what about David Reinbacher? Are they going to pick him? And I went, don't worry, I have you covered. At this point, Dmitry Simashev, Axel Sandin-Pellikka, David Reinbacher are all off the board. Because believe me, if Simashev had fallen down to this point, I would have been running up to the podium to myself to go and make sure that I could pick him at this point. Severely underrated player. Ask elite prospects, ask anybody else in the scouting community. But no, there was another name at 37th overall, and one that I've come to really like in this draft, talking with different people, and that's Tom Willander of Rögle BK in Sweden. Offensive upside, really polished game, a lot to love here. I think that with Sandin-Pellikka likely being the top offensive defenseman in this draft here, and this doesn't include Dragicevic, because I think Willander's game is a little bit more polished here. And I look at this and I go, yeah, I at 37th overall, incredible value, because I think he's going to get scooped up at the end of the first round too. There will be a run on defensemen. Whenever Reinbacher gets picked, there will be a run on defensemen across all leagues. You will see Reinbacher go. You'll see Sandin-Pellikka go. You'll see a Tanner Molendyk go. You'll see Dmitry Simashev, Lukas Dragicevic, someone who has the patience to fix his defensive flaws there. And if Willander is the one who falls through the cracks, he shouldn't, but if he is, at 37th overall, if you're the Canadiens, you're getting incredible value here. And someone that I really like in this draft, and I know a lot of other scouts like in this draft. And in draft 1, shifting into the 3rd round with the nicest pick in the draft, 69th overall, I finally picked a goalie for the Canadiens here. I thought about picking a goalie at 37th, a Trey Augustine or something like that. But I saw Willander there, and I went, I haven't picked a defenseman, and I know the Canadiens want to add to that prospect pool on the defensive side of the puck. And I couldn't ignore Willander. But at 69th overall, I picked Jacob Fowler from the USHL. And we've had people ask us questions on this podcast about Fowler. He's someone I did not get a chance to talk to at the draft combine because I wasn't, I was either preoccupied or I might have been eating lunch, which is entirely possible. But based on how many goalies the Canadiens talked to in that at the combine, I wouldn't be shocked if Fowler's one of them. And I think he is someone that if the Canadiens really truly want to add a goalie, Fowler seems like one of those guys that should be right there. Maybe he's fallen a little bit off the radar a little bit just because of other names out there. Trey Augustine, the Adam Gajan entering in here, Michael Hrabel in here. But I look at his year in the USHL. 921 save percentage, 27-9-4 with the Youngstown Phantom in 40 games. In the playoffs, 9 games, 8-1, 952 save percentage. He was a 927 the year before. Absolutely someone who seems to have all the tools to be, and it looks like he's also going to Boston College along with Smith and Ryan Leonard and Gabriel Perreault. Someone I could absolutely see the Canadiens taking that shot on. Maybe not the first goalie who will be taken in this draft. I think Trey Augustine will be the first goalie taken in this draft. But I do think that if he's there at 69th overall, the Canadiens are going to take a good hard look at him if their other options are off the board. Shifting gears to draft 2, we have Zach Benson and Samuel Honzek in the program already here. Program like we are a college football team here. We're going back to the WHL for a 3rd time. And in there, we're taking Brandon Wheat Kings center, Nate Danielson. Someone, again, who I've seen climb draft boards and is likely should be a first round pick here. And for some reason, he fell out of the round there. And I don't fully understand why or how that he did that. And I go, if you're the Canadiens, you can't ignore what Nate Danielson is. He's an incredibly fast, intelligent center, and that fits with Benson in there, and it fits honestly with Will Smith if he were there too. He's smart. Things are happening here that you want, and he tends to be a bit of a playmaker. Okay, you do need a finisher at some point in here. That is very much true. But I look at what Nate Danielson does, that if he were to fall that far at 37th overall, you're sprinting. You are sprinting to the podium again to do this. And ironically, I didn't plan this at all. Going into the third round, 69th overall, I did get a goalie in mock draft 2.0 for the Canadiens as well. And that is goaltender Michael Hrabal. Big, 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 big kid. And he's gigantic. He was the first interview from the combine that we did. Stands almost 6'7". He's got all the things you want in a modern goaltender, and he wants to be better and he wants to keep working. They got to pick a goalie, and I do think it's going to be the second or third round, depending on if there's a run on them or not. If there's a run, I can see the Canadiens packaging picks and moving up in the draft to try and make sure they get one of their top guys. And if they miss on Augustine, which they might, and if they don't get Hrabal or they don't get Gajan, there's Jacob Fowler, there is Carson Bjarnason, there's Thomas Milish, there's Scott Ratzlaff. There are other options in this draft that the Canadiens can go for. And now things get a little bit crazy because outside of the top three here, not so much an area that I understand as much. It's more depth prospects, your gambles, pretty much. And in round 4, the Canadiens have 3 picks, 101, 110, and 128. And we're going to dive into what those picks might entail coming up in our final segment. We are back here for Mock Draft 3.0 at Locked On Canadiens, and we're gonna go right through this now into draft 1 here. So in this draft, you have Will Smith at 5th overall. You have Ethan Gauthier at 31st overall. You have Tom Willander at 37th overall, and you have Jacob Fowler, the goaltender, at 69th nice overall. We are now pick 101, the Canadiens' first pick of round 4. They have 3 picks in this round. And I went for someone they probably watched play a lot this year. Denver Barkey's going to be off the board. Oliver Bonk is off the board. So who could they possibly be picking from the London Knights, Scott? I'll tell you, it's Easton Cowan. Easton Cowan's fast. He had one of the best agility times at the combine. He's not overly big. He's an energy winger. The kind of guy that you throw in your bottom 6 and tell him, just go for it. And I think he's primed to be a breakout candidate next year in London because London always wants to compete because that's how they are. And this is someone that I think they're very familiar with. And I like the idea of Easton Cowan here. I know he's not the flashiest player here, but when you're getting in there, you're looking for in your 3rd, 4th rounds and later on in the draft here, can one of these guys make it? They don't have to be a superstar. Can you be an NHL player? And I think that Easton Cowan can be that guy. He has all the makings of what you're looking for in there. And then going on to 110 overall from the Halifax Mooseheads, Dylan McKinnon. Dylan McKinnon is not flashy. Dylan McKinnon is an old school, is a throwback kind of player. He can skate. That's not really an issue. He's a physical stay-at-home defenseman. And I know, wow, this sounds so safe, and we're doing safe and everything on this. NHL teams are looking, like I said, with Cowan there, can you be an NHL player? And everything in McKinnon's game, he builds a solid defensive base to work off of. Stands 6'2", 185 pounds. Saw him in the draft. He's a stocky, he's built. He's a built kid, and he just seems like an absolute nightmare to play against. I don't want to play against a guy like that. I don't want to play against a guy who's going to make my life suck. And I think Dylan McKinnon is that guy. And when we get into draft 2, you will see someone else just like that. And 128th overall, someone that I hadn't even heard of before this. And and partially because they're playing in a league that maybe doesn't get as much attention as it should. But at 120th overall, I would be stunned if they fell this far, is Adar Suniev. He's playing for the Penticton Vs in the BCHL. He is, as I'm looking at the hockey writers here, the Leon Draisaitl, the Bradley Nadeau's, Connor McDavid in the BCHL. He is stands 6'2", 205 pounds. Big, powerful winger. Great shot. Great times on the forecheck. He's someone that I am really, really interested in as a player because I saw him and a lot of people talking to him at the NHL Combine. He's someone that I want to see. I wouldn't mind the Canadiens taking that risk here. I'm trying to see where he is actually going here and bringing up elite prospects. He's going to the University of Massachusetts next year. And with the Penticton Vs, he put up 90 points last season. That's nothing to scoff at in the BCHL. If I look at the BCHL scoring race here, it was Bradley Nadeau, Josh Nadeau, and Adar Suniev on Penticton. All three of them. 113, 110, 90 points. If you're in the fourth round and you have a guy who put up 90 points in his league last year, stands 6'2", 205 pounds, and can shoot and score like that, you take the risk at 128th overall, honestly. So that wraps up draft 1. Will Smith at 5th, Ethan Gauthier at 31, Tom Willander at 37, Jacob Fowler at 69th, Easton Cowan at 101, Dylan McKinnon at 110, and Adar Suniev at 128th overall. Now, though, to slide back over into draft 2, where remember, we have picked Zach Benson at 5th overall. We have picked Samuel Honzek at 31st overall. We have picked Nate Danielson somehow falling to 37th overall. And then Michael Hrabal at 69th overall. We are now at 101 overall right now. And I picked out of the QMJHL at 101st overall defenseman from Chicoutimi, Matteo Mann, 6'5", 225 pounds. He's a big old boy. And the thing is, and I know you look at his numbers, minus 23, 5 assists on the year. He is not an offensive defenseman by any means. But as I read his profile, his skating is improved, that he is mobile. He uses a good long reach, engages physically. He is a physically mature player that needs to build on his offensive upside here. Any offensive upside, actually, because his 5 points he has 3 goals across 3 QMJHL seasons. He's only 18 years old, though, and he stands 6'5", 225 pounds. The rankings are maybe not great. 94th by FC Hockey, 79 by the Hockey News, 160 by McKean's, 84th by NHL Central Scouting, North American Skaters. And remember, I am going off of the account there of FC Hockey's mock draft. But I look at this and I go, there are teams that are going to look at that and go, I can fix him. And maybe you can, maybe you can't. But he's an opportunity for the Canadiens development staff to try and create something there. At 110th overall, I went to the opposite side of things. Coming out of Finland, he's playing for, I believe, Eves. Patrick, you will correct me on this. Standing 5'10", playing forward, Emil Järventie. And he played on a lot of different teams last year. He played under 18. He played under 20. He played 15 games in Liga. He played in Mestis. He played 19 games there. He played for the under 18 team at the World Under 18 Challenge. He's someone that I'm interested in because there seems to be the offensive upside in the vision there, but maybe it's not as polished as it needs to be. Across the rankings here, 97th in the consolidated rankings on Elite Prospects, number 100 by FC Hockey, number 93 by Chris Peters, 100 by McKean, 62 by Craig Button, 33rd amongst European skaters in NHL Central Scouting, 69th by Draft Prospect Hockey, 96 by Smart Scouting. At 110th overall, I think that's a skill pick that you swing for, honestly. And he's someone, again, I want the Canadiens to not be afraid of Europe just because, you have players that are going to be there for a little while. Take the chance at skill there. You pick Matteo Mann, who is probably maybe not as exciting as you might hope. And he's not. He's a defensive defenseman. But I think the Canadiens, after getting so many hits on those first 3 there potentially, are going to take someone that, okay, maybe we can build that new version of Joel Edmondson, and it's Matteo Mann, who's gigantic and mean and nasty to play against. And Emil Jarventi presents that fourth round pick that if he doesn't make it, it's a fourth round pick, but the upside is there that you have to kind of bet on. And at 128th overall in draft 2 out of Cape Breton, I picked Cam Squires, 64 points in 67 games playing for Cape Breton this year. It's the offensive upside looks like it's there. And I look at the point totals here and I see the players that are ahead of him playing on much, much better teams or much older players. Guys like Justin Robidog, guys like Matthew Cataford, Pierre-Olivier Waugh, who should be gone by this point, Zach Dean, Ethan Gauthier. He's right there with Ethan Gauthier in terms of points. You know, he has 64 points. Gauthier ended up with 69 nice points on the year here. And it's 128th overall. If you see something to build on here, at this point, you're not going to find a piece that, wow, they fell so much further than I thought. It is what it is. They're not players who are going to, blow the doors off you. Occasionally, maybe you do find that. You find your Vincennes Roars. You find your Raphael Harvey-Pinards. And I have no doubt the Canadiens probably will in this draft. The issue is when I did this pick, I didn't see other goaltenders sitting in and around that number there. And I didn't want to reach too much on things. But I think in these rounds, they're going to try and grab more than one goalie in this draft because there's a lot of goalies in this draft. And like I said, at 37th overall, I could add the pick of any goalie in the draft I wanted, but I swung on Willander and I swung on Nate Danielson because they were there and I didn't expect them to be. And yes, it's a mock draft. I understand that things can change here, but I want you to tell me on Twitter and in the comments, would you rather have draft 1, Will Smith, Ethan Gauthier, Tom Willander, Jacob Fowler, Easton Cowan, Dylan McKinnon, and Adar Suniev? Or draft 2, Zach Benson, Samuel Hanzik, Nate Danielson, Michael Hrabel, Matteo Mann, Emil Jarventi, and Cam Squires. I think that I found a good mix of both high-value offensive upside here and also just, I don't want to call it safety, but the NHL GM pick in this, if that makes sense, that there's a nice balance that I could see the Canadiens doing something like that. And obviously, things can change in a heartbeat, of course. I'm going to wrap the show here, though. Laura will be back for our other episode. We're probably going to be finishing up your mailbag questions for the week. We have some great guests planned. I'm going to be in Toronto over next weekend, so Laura will have guests for the Monday episode, I'm pretty sure. We will let you know once we have confirmed on that. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. Follow myself at Scott Matla. If you have any concerns, email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Folks, we will see you all next time.